let's talk about week 17. The Seattle Seahawks, it is Mason Rudolph's job. Once again, everybody's making a big deal out of this. Oh, is it because Kenny isn't it? Are they riding the hot hand? What does this mean for the future? Kenny spoke and he said, hey, look, I want to play. Like, I'm ready to go. I'm pushing myself out there. It's kind of everybody else that's holding me back. I think I have a theory, and I don't know if everybody agrees with this one, but my thought is very clear, and I've thought about this from really the moment that Kenny spoke right up until right now. Everybody keeps talking about, oh, this is the future, this is the end. If you bench Kenny Pickett, it's all over. You can't go back to this guy. It kills the morale, whatever. We talked about how you have to have that conversation in the offseason either way because you're going to bring in somebody else. This is not going to be, it's going to be a new quarterback room no matter what. They're not coming in here in 2024 with Mason Rudolph and Mitch Trubisky as their backups. Chances are Mason Rudolph's gone. He's going somewhere else. There's going to be a number of teams that are looking to sign him, especially if he has a solid 2 games these last 2 weeks. And he's not going to stick around in Pittsburgh and be like, oh, well, maybe I'll get another opportunity. There's no chance. If the Minnesota Vikings call or the Raiders or maybe the Denver Broncos, there will be teams that can't really draft a Caleb Williams or a Drake May. And they're like, okay, what veterans can we bring in here to try and fill that void? I think he'll have a number of options there, and they will be better options. So chances are he's gone. Mitch Trubisky, no chance they're bringing him back. There's just, it's just not going to happen unless he's like, hey, I'll come back here, be the third for like vet minimum. Then maybe, but I still don't think that's an option for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It will be a new quarterback room either way. When it comes to the morale side, the Kenny Pickett, the you can't turn back once you bench him officially, blah, blah, blah. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers have an easy justification to say, hey, he's injured. He is not ready. Therefore, he will not play. We're going to continue to use Mason Rudolph. I don't necessarily know if I believe that to the fullest extent. I think that I kind of look at it and say, to some degree, Kenny is probably healthier than they are making it seem, and he is probably closer to a return than they're making it seem. And if this was the middle of the season, you go back to Kenny Pickett at this point, no questions asked. But since there's 2 games left, you stick with the hot hand. You have to ride the hot hand. Your only option is to try and make the playoffs. It means nothing about what Kenny Pickett does or doesn't or how he feels or whatever. Why this does not matter for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I've thought about this in length the last couple of days, is because it's very simple. The reason Mason Rudolph is not going to come back to the Pittsburgh Steelers is because this is Kenny Pickett's job to lose in 2024. It does not mean that he is not going to lose it. It just means that when they walk onto the field at OTAs in the spring, Kenny Pickett will be their QB1 who takes QB1 reps. And when they get to a spot in the summer when training camp starts, Kenny Pickett will be QB1 taking QB1 reps. And honestly, keeping Kenny Pickett on the sideline these last 2 games allows you to somewhat remove yourself from the thought of, well, we have to get a quarterback right now as early as possible, because the NFL is very good at forgetting. They are the shortest memory in the world. You take a year off after an awful season, you're really good. In Kenny Pickett's case, all you need is 5 games. If you could go 5 games of not being on the field, by the time training camp rolls around, the Pittsburgh Steelers' memory will be completely erased, and they will not be worrying themselves about drafting a quarterback in the first round of the NFL draft or bringing in a veteran that could compete with Kenny for a starting job or whatever. Will there be like somewhat of a competition? Will there be capable talent behind him? Yes, but it does not matter about these last 2 games. And honestly, I think it benefits Kenny Pickett because come OTAs, it is still his job to lose. And that benefits everybody, including the quarterback that everybody's freaking out about how you cannot go back to if you bench him in week 17 and week 18.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like this, like you said, it's his job to lose. This isn't going to be, look, I think you give some consideration maybe if Mason Rudolph is, continues to play at this level, you try to keep him in Pittsburgh as long as you can. That can be your competition. But like you said, this guy, if he continues to play at the rate that he is, there's going to be a ton of teams that are interested in him and willing to pay a lot more money than the Steelers are to bring him around. Kenny Pickett doesn't, entering OTAs or entering the spring as QB1 is no guarantee, and Kenny Pickett, I think we all kind of knew that he was going to have to earn his way onto the field in 2024. I mean, even if he kind of has the inside track on the starting job, I don't think that's guaranteed at all, especially going into a year 3 after year 2 where I don't think he's taken any meaningful steps forward. So I completely agree. Like this is as good an excuse as any to let Kenny reset, to let him get fully healthy, and then you kind of just throw it all in on 2024, and that's where you kind of set yourself up to make a tough decision about Kenny Pickett. You let him get an offseason of recovery, and you just hope that you go in and you're able to get a really full picture of him, because it's decision time. Quite frankly, it's time to kind of hunker down and say whether or not this is next season is when you, I feel like, have to make that final decision about this is our guy or he isn't. I think that's when you're bringing in some competition, obviously, to kind of push him a little bit, but ultimately next season is about Kenny Pickett, and it's about, okay, is this our guy or is it not? Moving on and going into the future, because he's really, I think, got to prove a lot to prove to you that he's capable of being this team's franchise quarterback for years and years to come. You just obviously haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I agree. And the competition will be like, they'll be there. Like, I agree that they'll bring in people, but they're going to look at this as we have to give Kenny Pickett the opportunity to lose the job. He doesn't have to win anything. He's just got to not lose the job, because that's what you do. Like, you don't draft somebody in the first round and then 2 years in, after you realize your offensive coordinator is terrible, say, oh, okay, well, the quarterback's done. You got to give him an opportunity with the new offensive coordinator to come in here and look good. Your job is also to make sure that your backup and probably your number 3 is capable to also come in here and be a winning quarterback if you need to call on that quarterback. But I just don't think the Pittsburgh Steelers are sitting around thinking, we got to go get a Russell Wilson because Kenny's not going to be our guy next year. I think they're thinking, we really, really hope Kenny does not lose the job in training camp of 2023 or 2024 or early enough in the season, and we hope Kenny continues to win. Like, we hope Kenny takes a step forward. That's what the Steelers thought is they still want Kenny Pickett to be the guy. They have to take more precautions this offseason, but it does not change anything about how they're going to handle the offseason or whatever, because that's how they were going to do it anyways. 5 weeks ago, the thought process was, we're going to have guys that come in here and be good enough that if Kenny isn't good enough, we have somebody else who's capable, and I think that if Kenny continued to play poorly these last 5 weeks, the option was, we need to have somebody who could come in here and actually compete with this guy, which pushes you to a first or a second round quarterback or a veteran who's actually capable. You sit these last 2 games, it is now maybe a third, maybe a fourth round quarterback that we feel okay about, and a veteran that isn't a Jacoby Brissett, who's capable of starting, but isn't going to be our starting quarterback. And we don't look at him as our starting quarterback and then give Kenny an opportunity with somebody else. And I think that's where they stand.
Yeah, and to kind of go back to your original point, I mean, there's going to be a lot of moves I think the Steelers make this offseason that are going to cause people to panic and cause them to say,
yes,
oh, is this the end of Kenny Pickett in Pittsburgh? Is this the Steelers moving on? And no, this is just kind of going to be their plan all along. I mean, you got to have that insurance in case Kenny's not the guy in 2024 and doesn't kind of pan out the way you thought. But I don't think anything that the Steelers do this offseason is going to tell me, they're official. Like, unless they go, sign a Russell Wilson or a Kirk Cousins or something like that, that would be completely different from, like you said, like you outlined, drafting a third or fourth round guy, picking up a Jacoby Brissett or something like that. Those are moves that they're just going to make anyway, that they just have to. And there's just kind of no reason to panic in the face of those moves or hit any kind of big red buttons about, the future of Kenny Pickett.
Yep. There's no reason to panic right now. There's no reason to hyper fixate on, this is over for Kenny. And I think there's a lot of fans out there that are like, it should be over for Kenny Pickett. I think that's a totally different conversation. But when it comes to these last 2 games and how you handle them and what it means nothing. It just means that Mason Rudolph has an opportunity these last 2 weeks to get the Steelers into the playoffs, become a Joe Flacco for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and kind of revive his career and get an opportunity next season to be a Josh Dobbs or a Joe Flacco or whoever somewhere else and be that veteran that teams bring in and try to compete and earn a starting job elsewhere. So I don't think, like you said, no reason to hit the panic button at all. We'll see what 2024 brings us. If you're somebody who is just Kenny Pickett ain't the guy, this might be bad news for you. But if you're still a believer, just stay calm. It will happen. It will all look the same.